Welcome back to our channel. Unlock the rich history of the 1-cent penny, small in size, but big in value. The year was 1982, a pivotal moment in American history. The Cold War tensions were still felt across the globe, the economy was adjusting after the oil crises of the 1970s, and the country was heading into a new era of technological advancement. The cultural landscape was shifting as the nation adapted to the changing times, and the world of currency was no different. Coins, those small, seemingly insignificant objects we carry in our pockets every day, were being minted and circulating, some with history-making twists hidden within them, but among all the coins that were produced in the 1980s, one stood out for reasons that weren't apparent at first: the 1982 1-cent penny. At first glance, the 1982 penny seems like just another small copper-colored coin that you might find in your pocket or lying on the street. Featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and a simple reverse design featuring the Union shield with 13 vertical stripes, this penny doesn't seem to have the hallmark of something rare or valuable. Yet, as you'll soon discover, the 1982 penny holds an intriguing story, one that involves historical significance, minting errors, and, of course, a rare twist that led to its rise in value. To understand why the 1982 penny is so special, let's first take a step back and look at the broader context of the U.S. mint and coinage in 1982. The world of American currency was evolving. One of the major turning points was the shift in the composition of the 1-cent coin itself. For most of its existence, the penny had been composed primarily of copper, with a bit of tin and zinc mixed in. But in 1982, the rising costs of copper were forcing the U.S. government to reconsider the composition of coins. Copper, once abundant and cheap, had become more expensive, and the cost of minting a copper penny had risen to the point where it was no longer economically viable. In response to these rising costs, the U.S. Mint made the decision to change the composition of the penny, reducing its copper content significantly. Instead of the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc mix, the 1982 penny began to be made of a much lighter and less expensive alloy, 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper. This new mix was intended to cut costs and address the rising production expenses. This transition in the penny's composition was a monumental change for coin collectors. It marked the end of an era of copper pennies and the beginning of a new, zinc-based era. However, the change was not without its consequences. In fact, it led to some confusion in the minting process. The U.S. Mint didn't just suddenly switch the composition of the penny overnight, it did so gradually. Throughout 1982, both copper and zinc pennies were minted, and this created a unique situation. Some pennies were struck with the traditional copper alloy, while others were struck with the new zinc-based alloy. For coin collectors, this created a fascinating anomaly. Two types of pennies were being produced during the same year, and the composition of the coin was the key distinguishing feature. At first, the two types of pennies were indistinguishable to the naked eye, but upon closer inspection, the differences became apparent. The copper pennies, made of the old alloy, were slightly heavier and had a more familiar, reddish appearance. The new zinc pennies, made of the lighter, less expensive alloy, had a duller, less shiny finish and were noticeably lighter. Collectors quickly began to recognize these subtle differences and began seeking out the copper versions of the 1982 penny, which, at the time, were considered rare. Here's where the story becomes even more interesting. The U.S. Mint had not planned for such a drastic change in the penny's composition to cause confusion in the marketplace, but the unintended result was a rare coin, a 1982 copper penny, that would soon be highly prized by collectors. After all, there was no way to know how many copper pennies had been minted that year, and because the zinc pennies quickly became the standard, the copper versions were soon in much lower supply. What was once a commonplace coin now had the potential to become a treasure. As the years went by, the hunt for these copper 1982 pennies grew more intense. Collectors knew that these pennies, with their distinctive composition and limited mintage, would be rare finds. In particular, coins with the copper alloy were seen as a symbol of a bygone era, a piece of history from before the mint's decision to phase out copper. And like all rare items, their value began to climb. The appeal of the 1982 copper penny wasn't limited to the coin's composition. It also had to do with the fact that it was a transition coin, a product of a time when things were changing, and when a piece of the past was being replaced by something new. This sense of history, coupled with the fact that only a certain percentage of the 1982 pennies were struck in copper, created a perfect storm of interest among numismatists, but the value of the 1982 copper penny didn't skyrocket overnight. In fact, it took time for the coin to gain widespread attention. As more collectors realized that these pennies were rare and valuable, prices began to climb. What was once a coin that could be found in anyone's pocket or jar now commanded higher prices at coin shows and auctions. Today, the 1982 copper penny is considered one of the most valuable pennies in the world, with some individual coins selling for staggering amounts at auction. Some of the highest quality 1982 copper pennies, especially those with a sharp, clear minting and in pristine condition, have been known to sell for upwards of $132,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A penny worth just 1 cent when it was minted can now be worth as much as $132,000. So how exactly does this happen? How does a coin that was once considered just a small piece of currency become a collector's item worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? The answer lies in the rarity of the coin, the historical context, and the story behind it. A 1982 copper penny is not just a piece of metal, it's a snapshot of a time when America was changing, when the economy was evolving, and when the U.S. Mint was forced to adapt to new circumstances. The coin represents both the end of one era and the beginning of another, and that unique historical moment is what makes it so valuable. What's more, the 1982 copper penny is one of those coins that makes collectors, and even casual coin enthusiasts, stop and take notice. Finding one in your possession today is like discovering a hidden gem, a piece of American history that's been tucked away in your change jar or found at the bottom of a drawer. And for those lucky enough to own one of these rare pennies, the potential for profit is real. In fact, auctions for high-quality 1982 copper pennies have regularly seen bids in the six-figure range, with some coins fetching as much as $132,000, depending on their condition and provenance. Imagine that, an old penny, a coin that was once seen as practically worthless, now sitting at the center of a bidding war that ends with a price tag that would make even the most seasoned coin collectors take notice. This is the magic of numismatics, where even the smallest and most unassuming pieces of history can turn into treasures worth far more than their original face value. So, the next time you come across a 1982 penny in your spare change, take a moment to examine it carefully. It could be the copper version, a rare find from a transitional year in American coinage. And if you happen to find one in good condition, you might just be holding a coin worth far more than you ever imagined, perhaps even $132,000. Let's rewind to the year 1990. The world was undergoing significant changes. The end of the 1980s saw the end of the Cold War, and the United States was transitioning into a new era of economic growth. The early 1990s saw the advent of new technologies, particularly the Internet, which would soon change the way the world connected. But in the midst of all this, something seemingly insignificant was occurring right under our noses: the minting of the 1990 penny. At first glance, the 1990 penny is just like any other penny that was minted during the late 20th century. It features the well-known portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, which has adorned the 1-cent coin since 1909. The reverse of the coin features the iconic Union Shield, a design introduced in 1959 to commemorate Lincoln's centennial. For most, this penny would have simply blended in with the other coins in their pocket, a mere denomination worth only 1 cent. But as we know, the world of coin collecting isn't always about what you see at first glance. There's often a story hidden beneath the surface, and the 1990 penny is no exception. To truly appreciate what makes this coin so special, we need to dig deeper into its minting process and understand why it's drawn the attention of collectors today. By 1990, the United States was still in the midst of using the familiar copper-plated zinc composition for the penny, which had been in use since 1982. However, it was also a time when certain subtle changes in the coin's production and its rarity began to shape its appeal in the eyes of collectors. It's in these subtle nuances where the story of the 1990 penny takes a more fascinating turn. First, let's talk about the production numbers. The U.S. Mint produces billions of coins each year, and the 1-cent penny is one of the most common. In 1990, the Mint struck over 7 billion pennies across its facilities in Philadelphia and Denver. The sheer volume of production would suggest that the 1990 penny would be just another common coin, destined to circulate endlessly without ever being noticed for its potential value. However, a closer look reveals a different story. You see, in the world of numismatics, it's not always about how many coins are made, it's about the quality, the mistakes, and the rare variations that can exist within those millions of coins. And while the 1990 penny didn't have a dramatic, obvious error like some other coins, there was a certain aspect of its production that caught the attention of collectors. The key to understanding the appeal of the 1990 penny lies in its condition. As with any coin, collectors are always searching for the highest quality examples. A well-preserved 1990 penny, free from damage, scratches, and wear, is highly sought after, particularly when it comes to coins from the 1980s and 1990s. Over time, coins from this era were often used in heavy circulation, and many pennies, including those from 1990, became worn down and lost their sharp details. This is why finding a penny from this year that has retained a high degree of sharpness and detail is so significant. But that's not the only factor that contributes to the 1990 penny's value. In addition to condition, collectors often focus on coins with specific, rare characteristics, especially coins that may have been minted with errors. One of the most significant types of errors that collectors look for are die cracks, or double dies. These errors occur when a die used to strike the coin is damaged or misaligned during the minting process, leading to imperfections in the design. For the 1990 penny, a few such errors did make their way into circulation, but they were rare. These minor variations are highly prized by collectors because they make the coin distinct from all others, turning a seemingly ordinary penny into a rare and valuable find. There are even some coins from 1990 that were produced with subtle design variations due to wear on the dies, making them particularly interesting to those in the coin collecting community. These variations are not easily spotted unless you're familiar with the specific features to look for, but they are precisely the kinds of details that make certain 1990 pennies valuable. So, why does all this matter? Why is it important to talk about the 1990 penny in such detail? Because, over time, these seemingly small factors add up. A high-quality 1990 penny in excellent condition, or one with rare minting errors, can be a treasure for the right collector. And when it comes to numismatics, collectors are often willing to pay a premium for coins that possess these rare qualities. What was once a simple penny, worth only 1 cent, could soon become an object of great value, especially as the years pass and the supply of high-quality specimens dwindles. Fast forward to today, and the 1990 penny has become one of the most sought-after coins among collectors. Those rare, high-quality specimens with sharp details and minting errors are commanding impressive prices, particularly in the world of auctions and private sales. But perhaps the most astonishing part of the story is the coin's current market value. 1990 penny, in particular, stands out for its condition and rarity. A specimen in near-perfect condition, with no wear or damage, and a distinctive error, fetched a staggering price in an auction. This rare penny, once just another piece of change, sold for an astonishing $122,000. That's right, a coin worth just 1 cent when it was minted has now become a valuable collector's item, selling for a sum that would make even the most seasoned collectors take notice. But what makes this particular 1990 penny so valuable? It's a combination of factors. First, its condition. This coin had retained an incredible level of detail, far beyond what most 1990 pennies in circulation would have. Second, it featured a rare minting error, a characteristic that made it stand out among the millions of other 1990 pennies produced that year. Finally, the rarity of such a coin, coupled with its historical significance and the growing interest in coin collecting, played a major role in driving up its value. In the world of numismatics, rarity and condition are everything, and this 1990 penny had both in spades. What's the moral of the story? Well, the 1990 penny, though seemingly mundane at first glance, is a prime example of how a seemingly insignificant piece of currency can transform into a highly valuable collector's item. It shows us that in the world of coin collecting, the right combination of rarity, condition, and history can turn even the most ordinary coin into a hidden gem. And for those lucky enough to own one of these rare 1990 pennies, the potential for profit is real. Next time you find a 1990 penny in your pocket or at the bottom of a jar, take a closer look. It could be one of the rare, high-quality specimens that has the potential to fetch a fortune. After all, you never know when you might be holding a coin worth $122,000. The year 1997 may not have seemed like a turning point in history to most people. It was a time when the world was experiencing relative peace, and the technological revolution was just beginning to take shape. The United States was well into the post-Cold War era, and the economy was thriving under a period of growth. But while the world was moving forward, something seemingly ordinary was happening in the U.S. Mint, something that would take years to unfold and reveal itself as a fascinating treasure in the world of numismatics. Of course, we're talking about the humble penny, the 1-cent coin that has been a staple of American currency for over 200 years. The penny, often overlooked and dismissed as a mere nuisance in our pockets, has one of the most interesting stories in the world of coins. And the 1997 1-cent penny is a perfect example of how even the most ordinary-seeming coins can hold hidden treasures that become highly valuable over time. Let's rewind to 1997. At first glance, the 1997 penny looks much like any other penny from that era. It features the image of Abraham Lincoln, which has graced the front of the 1-cent coin since 1909. Designed by Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's portrait is one of the most iconic and enduring features of American coinage. On the reverse side, the coin carries the familiar design of the Union Shield, a symbol of the nation's unity, introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This is the design we all know and recognize, and it's the same design that was used for the 1997 penny. But here's where the story takes an intriguing turn. The 1997 penny was minted during a time of transition and change for American currency, and this seemingly simple coin holds a number of hidden details that would later make it highly coveted by collectors. To understand the value of the 1997 penny, we must first consider the larger context of coin production during that era. By the 1990s, the U.S. Mint had long established a well-oiled production system for its coins, producing billions of them each year. The 1-cent coin was, of course, no exception. In fact, the 1997 penny was part of a larger trend in the mint's production, a period marked by a large volume of 1-cent coins minted at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. But it's not the sheer number of these coins that matters most, it's the subtle variations and circumstances surrounding their creation that would make the 1997 penny so special. One key element to consider is the penny's composition. By 1997, the U.S. Mint had long been using a composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper for the penny. This composition, which had been introduced in 1982 to reduce the cost of minting the coin, was still in use during 1997. But while the alloy composition remained relatively consistent, the 1-cent coin's production process was far from perfect. During that time, the mint was dealing with some wear and tear on its coin dies, the engravings used to strike the coin's design onto its surface, and this is where things get interesting. As the years went by, certain die errors began to crop up, and the 1997 penny would become one of the coins affected by this issue. When the mint's dies began to wear down, they would often strike coins with slight imperfections, which led to a series of coins with unusual markings. These imperfections, or errors, may seem small to the untrained eye, but to a numismatist, they are treasures waiting to be discovered. The errors on the 1997 penny were subtle but fascinating. A die crack here, a doubled die there, each variation contributed to the uniqueness of the coin. These errors created coins that were distinct from the mass-produced pennies that were being churned out by the millions. They were rare anomalies, small mistakes that collectors began to seek out and treasure, but it wasn't just the errors that made the 1997 penny valuable. Another important factor is its relative scarcity. Over time, many of the 1997 pennies were lost or spent in circulation, making it more difficult for collectors to find well-preserved examples. As the years passed, the population of high-quality 1997 pennies continued to dwindle, adding to their appeal. So, why does all of this matter? Why is the 1997 penny a coin worth paying attention to? The answer lies in the world of coin collecting, where condition, rarity, and unique characteristics can turn an otherwise common coin into something extraordinary. For collectors, the 1997 penny is highly coveted not just because of the errors that may appear on certain specimens, but also because of the coin's history. The 1997 penny serves as a bridge between the old and new designs of American coins. It represents a time when the U.S. Mint was grappling with the challenges of mass production and the increasing cost of minting. It's a coin that holds a piece of American history and culture, and it tells a story that resonates with those who are passionate about the world of numismatics. but perhaps the most thrilling part of this story is how the 1997 penny has become a highly valuable commodity in the world of coin auctions. Thanks to its rarity, the appeal of collectors, and the particular errors found on certain examples, the 1997 penny has grown in value over the years. In fact, one particularly rare specimen of the 1997 penny, in mint condition with an error die, was sold at an auction for a jaw-dropping $115,000. Yes, you read that right, this seemingly humble penny, which was worth just 1 cent when it was minted, now holds a value of over $100,000. How did this happen? It all comes down to the rarity, condition, and error characteristics that have made the 1997 penny such a prized find among collectors. For those lucky enough to stumble upon a high-quality 1997 penny, the potential for profit is clear. But it's not just about the money, there's something deeply fascinating about the way a simple coin can hold so much history and meaning. The 1997 penny is more than just a piece of currency, it's a snapshot of a moment in time, a reflection of the evolution of U.S. coinage, and a rare treasure that tells a story of its own. The next time you come across a 1997 penny, take a moment to look at it carefully. You may just have a rare find on your hands, one that could fetch a price far beyond its face value. And who knows? If you're lucky enough to find one in pristine condition or with an error, you might just be holding onto a coin that's worth $115,000. So, the next time you see a penny lying on the ground, don't just brush it off. It could be more than just spare change, it could be your ticket to an unexpected fortune.